corona situation in Japan has gotten a lot better in recent weeks and months, um, especially when you compare it to a terrible place like America. You know, America's had like what 720,000 deaths now from the horrible coronavirus, and Japan's had like 18,000. So Japan's done very well. I mean, there's been a lot of concern here, but you know, the Japanese people, as you know, are very group oriented. They follow directions, you know, about social distancing, and you know, they were already used to wearing masks. The Japanese have always worn masks during the hay fever season in the spring, and so right now it's hard to go any place at all and find any Japanese not wearing a mask. It's like virtually 100%. And you know, it's a clean country, as you know. They do wash their hands a lot. They're very sanitary. When they come into home, they take off their shoes, you know, so they don't bring the germs back into the house. So Japan's done a terrific job with Corona, and we're happy as far as basketball goes, because we were restricted this last season to 50% of capacity in our arenas. But it looks like now we may, you know, I think what they're going to start playing with right now is having certain sections, if people can show that they've been vaccinated, that there won't be the restriction on, you know, only 50% in that section. So I think they're talking about expanding the number of people we can get in our games, which we're very anxious to have happen. So, you know, compared to many other countries around the world, I mean, Japan is doing a very good job with the COVID, you know, pandemic. Japan is very methodical about what they do, as you know from having lived here, and it takes a long time for them to make a decision. But once they make a decision, they move relatively fast. So while Japan was way behind America in the number of vaccinations, when they really started vaccinating, they went past America very, very quickly. So right now, the percentage of people vaccinated in Japan is much higher than America. I first came when I went to Stanford University. I started in 1964, and I went to Stanford to hopefully get a good education and to play baseball mainly. I was a baseball player, and I also had thoughts about Stanford at that time. When I looked into the school, it had one of the best international exchange programs of any American university. So I grew up in Los Angeles and kind of I don't know. I felt a wanderlust. I felt that I wanted to see some other parts of the world. So when I went to Stanford, I had a predisposition to wanting to go overseas. And then my 1 month into staying at Stanford, I went into the men's restroom to take a leak. And I was standing in front of the urinal, and I saw a sign right in front of me that said, "Spend a summer in Japan." And it said, if you're interested, come to the orientation program about the Stanford Keio University Exchange Program. And as a freshman, just a couple months into being at Stanford, I applied for that program, and I was selected as one of the kids that was lucky enough to come to Keio University in Tokyo. And that was, for me, it was between my freshman and sophomore year. So I had my 19th birthday in Japan, and kind of fell in love with it. You know, I found the people to be very hospitable and friendly and kind and gracious. And so when I came back to Stanford after that one summer, it was only like 2 months in Japan, I became the Stanford chairman of the exchange program. And then for the next couple of years, I helped run that program, the exchange between Stanford and Keio. And then in my senior year, I was lucky enough to get the scholarship to come to Keio to do my last year of college at Keio. So I actually got my Stanford degree in absentia. I was having so much fun in Tokyo in 1968 that I had them send my diploma to me in the mail. I didn't even come back to Stanford for graduation, which now I regret. I should not have done that, but that's what I was doing. So I got my introduction to Japan through the Stanford Keio exchange program, and I kind of fell in love with it when I was a very impressionable young man. I oftentimes think when I had my 19th birthday, I had that in Spain, or had that in Germany or Australia or South Africa. I might have wound up spending the rest of my life in another country, but I was at a very impressionable age, and Japan impressed me so much that I got hooked. So, and it just escalated from there. Not easily, I don't think, because in my case, I've been working in the sports industry almost my entire life here in Japan. And how many other, you know, foreigners do you find in that capacity? In other words, there might be some very capable people in the industry in other countries of the world, but do they speak Japanese? Do they understand this culture? Have they had experience in Japan? I think I was a kind of a special breed, and since I was the first foreign GM in the history of Japanese baseball, and then I've had a long career in sports writing, sports broadcasting, and so forth. It makes me a little more attractive than a GM from Madrid or Los Angeles. You know, in other words, or potential GM. In other words, I don't think that from what I did, it's going to open a floodgate for other people, unless there's people like me. In other words, they have to speak Japanese, understand the culture, understand sport, and so forth. And I don't think there's a lot of people around like that. So I don't see a flood of front office executives coming in. I just don't think it will happen. The players can't be done without. I mean, the foreign players are the best players in the country. And we rely on them. So there's always going to be room for the players, but the front office is a different story. Well, I think for the old timers, it's hard to accept that there's not going to be, opportunity to, jump up in class, and there's not going to be, you're not going to have to worry about regulation to go down. It's a new concept, and I'm new to basketball in a way, and I've been used to baseball where you don't have that. And I'm not 100% sure, in some respects, it's probably good. There's an awful lot of pressure on us and other teams that, let's say, in B2 right now, to meet the requirements to go up to B1 and to be part of that top league. They've got a huge step up, like in what your annual budget needs to be. It's like a minimum of like $12 million, and that's like more than 2.5 times almost what we're currently doing, and all B2 teams are doing. I don't know how many B2 teams can meet that high bar. And the minimum requirement for arena is 5,000 people. Most teams are not going to be able to qualify for that. So they're putting high bars. Maybe it's because high standards. Maybe it's because they want people to really strive to get there. Which we're thinking about town. We're trying to improve sales. We're trying to, we're going to renovate our arena probably, or we're pushing to get a new arena built. So that's good for basketball. I don't know if they're realistic bars or standards that they're setting. So, but whether it's good to have it fixed, that there are X number of teams at the top and the teams below can't have no way of going up. I don't know if that's the best system or not. I think there's a lot to be said about when you're facing, regulation, you're going to be facing going down, could make you work a lot harder. I would hope that basketball, which is a newer sport than, let's say, for example, baseball, has a better vision of this kind of thing. I signed the first contract with the NBA for broadcast of NBA games in 1984 with David Stern, the recently departed wonderful commissioner. And in 1984. The NBA was on the verge of collapse. They had like 23 teams, I think it was at the time, and like 6 teams wanted to quit. They were talking about having a 17, team league, and they had all kinds of problems. And then they got this great commissioner, David Stern, that had a vision about, the game becoming international and strengthening the finances of the league and being tougher on drug testing and all kinds of things that he did that made the league strong. But one of the big things that David Stern did, he had an international vision. And when he became the commissioner of the NBA, there was a very small percentage of international players. And there was virtually, when I bought the broadcast rights for Japan, I was the third country in the world. When I represented Japan, Sun TV of Kobe, when I bought the rights for broadcasting NBA games in Japan in 1984, we were only the third country in the world, I think after Mexico and Italy, to buy NBA, broadcasts. Now they're in over 200 countries in the world. Now they're players, the highest paid players in the world in any league. What a change, because they had a vision for the world. In the Japanese league now, the B.League is certainly in one of the top 10 leagues in the world. But if they want to climb up and get better and better and be closer to the really good European leagues and so forth, they do have to have an international vision. And baseball for a while talked about having an Asian league, Korea and Taiwan and China and Japan and so forth, but it never went anyplace. It flopped. I would love to see Japan, be part of an Asian league that becomes part of a world league. Basketball has been one of the greatest growth sports in sports for the last couple of decades. So there's great potential, and it just takes vision. I think Shimada, I don't really know him well. I've only met him like 3 or 4 times, and very briefly each time, the commissioner of the B.League. But he seems like a really sharp guy. I mean, as a businessman, he took a team that was almost dead and made it the best team in the country. So I think he has the vision, hopefully, to do this. I don't know if he can be a leader like David Stern. David Stern took the NBA to the top of the sports world in a way. And that was tremendous vision. And of course, David Stern had a lot of really good people. The commissioner of the National Hockey League now, Gary Bettman, was David Stern's assistant. So David had really good people around him. And the current commissioner of the NBA is also a protege of David Stern. So you need really good people to lead the charge. And I'm not sure where it's going to go with Japan. I just hope that they go for it. And they need to have more, they need to play more games in Asia, and they need that to be a part of a world structure. I don't know who the world leader is going to be right now. Is it going to be the guy that's heading what was it called? FIBA is the International Basketball Federation. I mean, is he strong enough to motivate the whole world to do what they should do? I don't know. Well, first of all, we have a great owner. The number one stockholder in our club is David Halton, who is a Canadian Japanese, and David is really a super guy. And David was the one who convinced Okitani to come to our club 3 years ago. And there were like 10 teams that wanted Okitani as their head coach. And David was able to convince him to come here. And Okitani, Dai Okitani loved his time here. We're still good friends, and he's a terrific guy. And he loved being in Sendai. But when the process is that Okinawa, their owner, decided, even though Okinawa owner dumped him previously, after he'd won 2 championships in Okinawa, dumped him. But it was kind of hard to refuse going back to where he won 2 national championships, plus the number 1 arena in the country now, and a team that's told him they will spend as much money as is needed to have a championship team. So he kind of got an offer that he couldn't refuse, to go back to Okinawa, to the Ryukyu Kings. And so, but the interesting thing is David, who's a dynamic guy, The day that we all knew that Okitani, Coach Dai, was weighing this offer. The day that we learned that he was going to accept it, David made a reservation to go fly to Okinawa the next day because he'd already researched who would perhaps be the best second choice, the next choice to have to come and coach our team. And we knew that Coach Fujita is very young, but has coached for almost 10 years. You know, he only had a couple of years as a player before injuries shut him down and he became a coach. And he's had great success as a coach. You know, he won the division last year, you know, in Mukyu. So, I mean, he did well. But David was on a plane the next day to Okinawa. And David Halton had a 3-hour meeting with Coach Fujita, and Coach Fujita agreed to become our head coach after that 3-hour meeting. So it had a lot to do with how genuine, how sincere, and how nice, you know, our owner is. And then Coach Fujita too knew that, you know, that we're an upcoming organization. You know, we're a good organization with, you know, in the last couple of years, we've got most of all our players have all come to us from B1. You know, most B1 players don't want to go down to a B2 team, certainly if it's not going to be a contender. So we've had the majority of all our players that have joined us have all come from B1. This year, all 3 came from B1. So the Japanese players. And actually, if you count, Justin Burrell, he's also coming from B1. So we've got a good organization. It's a good town. We got a great arena and a great owner, a good organization. So Coach Fujita came to us because of all those factors. But the main factor was that David Halton, our owner, was able to convince him that it was a good place for him to come to. It's kind of interesting. It's like, you know, I don't know, the Knicks and the Lakers, you know, trading coaches. You just don't expect that to happen, but it happened. I think they're getting very close. I mean, what you're just saying right now is that, you know, the 3 guys you just mentioned, and there's other young guys that are playing now that are really good. You know, I mean, I think for the last couple of decades, basketball has certainly been one of, if not the number one growth sport in Japan, and it's getting a lot of attention. And certainly Hachimura and Watanabe and Ababa have all helped, you know, the publicity, and a lot of young kids want to play basketball now. So it's getting better and better. You know, I mean, in the Olympics, the men's team lost all their games in the actual Olympic competition. But if you think about it, they beat France in one of the prelim games, you know, and then France a couple of days later, beat America, right? Mm-hmm. So Japan has arrived, you know, and 2 years ago in international competition, for the first time ever, Japan beat Australia with 2 or 3 NBA players on the roster. So Japan has really improved. And what do they need to do now? I mean, I think they're going in the right direction. The game is becoming more popular. The league is better now. You know, the B.League is better now. It's more competitive. You know, what you're just saying about prices are going up, but what you're bringing in is really good players. And Japanese players get better if they compete against better foreign players. So, I think the sky's the limit for basketball here, and I think it's growing rapidly. And I definitely think that Japan is going to be more and more competitive. You think about, for example, you know, rugby in this country. 30 years ago, they would, you know, get into the World Cup and get beaten by 100 points or the World Cup or whatever it was, you know, and now they beat countries like South Africa or, you know, England in international competitions. I know Michael for 2 reasons. Number one, in 1985, 86, I was the president, representative director in Japan of ProServe, and Michael Jordan was my client. So I represented Michael and presented the opportunity to use him in commercials to many Japanese companies. But the interesting thing is that I never signed one deal for him in Japan because his price was so high and the terms had to be so long that no Japanese company would go for it. In other words, I think I had Nissan, the car company, offer like, I don't know, $500,000 for a 3-month, commercial using him. And I think it was just print. I don't think he even had to do anything. And his main guy, in Mr. Falk, the pro serve in the States, said, no way, it's got to be multi-year, multi-million, or we don't do anything. So I never could, but I did talk to his agent a lot, and I talked to him occasionally, but none of the deals that I tried to do for him in 85 and 86 worked out. But then when he signed, in 1994, after his father was killed, Michael decided to honor his father, and after he won 3, championships, and go to the sport that his father loved the most, which was baseball. Kind of a way of honoring his father. Plus, there was a strike, that helped convince him. Well, no, excuse me, the strike came later with baseball. Excuse me, but anyhow, he decided to play baseball, and Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Chicago Bulls, was also the owner of the Chicago White Sox. So Michael went to Jerry Reinsdorf and said, I would like to play baseball. And I think with most other owners, if he had went and said that, you had one of maybe the only owner in the NBA that had a professional baseball team as well. So Jerry said, okay. So, I mean, he honored Michael's wishes and let him come. And we were the AA team where you would put most prospects, people that had you guys that are really raw, you'd put them at rookie ball or single A ball. But put Michael at AA because he's such a skilled athlete. But it's not at the AAA ball. It's not just a level below major leagues, but it's probably the right place to develop him. And so he came to us. And how was Michael? Michael, there was such a furor created about him coming to Birmingham that was created around him by the media, by the fans. And it was like a whirlwind or, a hurricane that was going around Michael because he's such an incredible name, personality, and everything. But if you met him one-on-one, like I did, just a down-to-earth guy. The players loved him. He was a player's player, easy to get along with, very, very gracious with everything. And the president of the ball club at that time, which I selected after I left to come back to Japan, I was still part owner of the club, but I wasn't the president of the club when Michael came. But the new president I selected said, Marty, I've made it a rule that none of our staff can ask Michael for a picture, but you're an exception. So you get your picture with Michael because you gave me this job. So I had a picture with Michael, in the corridor at the Hoover Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama, and we talked for a while. He was just gracious. We talked about. I said, "I'm sorry I couldn't get you big deals in Japan." He said, "Don't worry about it. I understand that's not your fault." But a cool guy. One of my big memories of him in Birmingham was the fact that he likes his cigars. And you see him on golf courses. He would frequently have a cigar. Okay. And in the minor leagues, tobacco is forbidden. It's completely a no-no. And he walked into the dugout one day with a cigar in his mouth, but it wasn't lit. He just was kind of chewing on it. But the league president fined him $300 for having tobacco in the dugout. But $300 for Michael, who was making $25 million a year from Nike alone at that time. He didn't need the White Sox money to play in AA baseball, but he was making $25 or $30 million from just maybe one account alone. The $300 fine for him having a cigar in his mouth, he just thought it was a big joke. So anyhow, Michael was a good guy. You probably see many people say he was a horrible baseball player and he was no good. It was terrible. It was a mistake. Well, listen, he had not played baseball since he was 14 years old. And every month that he was with us, he got better and better and better. And by the end of the season, which is like September into October, he was playing really well, and he was hitting the ball well. He had like 3 home runs. He was our stolen base leader. I mean, he was a great athlete, as everyone knows, one of the best in the world. And I honestly feel he decided at that point there was a strike in the major leagues, and he used that as a semi-excuse to return to the NBA. that he wasn't going to be able to play in the major leagues. But I actually think Michael could have played Major League Baseball. But I also think that his ability wouldn't have allowed him to be a superstar in Major League Baseball. He could have been a regular. He could have been an everyday starter player, maybe, or maybe even in the outfield, a reserve at number 4 outfielder, not in the top 3. And I think with Michael's nature of wanting to be the best, I don't think he could look at going back and going into a sport where he wouldn't be considered the best. So while he was, and people should give him credit for the great strides that he made. He got so much better in such a short period of time. It was really incredible. Only one of the world's best athletes could have done that, and he did it.